And we begin with the big breaking news out of the biggest case in the nation, the murder trial for the death of George Floyd. The lead officer, Derek Chauvin, the man who had his knee on George Floyd's neck, that guy right there, has been released from jail. He made his bond, so he is free tonight. And he was held for a time at a facility. A lot of folks wondering, would he ever get out? Could he raise the funds? Where's the money going to come from? And what is life going to be like on the outside for him? There are a lot of questions we have tonight, including some of the conditions of his release from this facility. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice reporter Julia Janae, who's been covering this story for us as soon as it broke earlier today. Julia, a lot to talk about. What is the latest, though, on his release?
Vinny, the latest is that now, after 4.5 months behind bars, he is now a free man. We know from jail records that it was about 11:32 this morning that he was actually released from the Oak Heights State Prison. That's a maximum prison facility. You typically don't have your pretrial defendants in a prison, but he was transferred there for security reasons. We also know that he posted this bond through a casualty company, Allegheny Casualty Company. It's a national one that is out of California. He is the last of the 4 defendants who has actually been released. His other co-defendants were released back in June. They posted that bond rather quickly after they were arrested, but he was the one who has still remained behind bars and has been showing up for hearings as an inmate. So this definitely changes the optics when we think about the next hearing in this case.
Oh, absolutely. And potentially the trial. So he started in one facility, ended up at that facility, and the history of what the bail amounts were here. Can you walk us through all of that?
Right, so let's start with when he was initially arrested. Of course, this was after that viral video of the arrest of George Floyd. So May 29th, 2020 is when he was actually arrested, booked. His bail was set at $500,000, and this was through the Hennepin County Jail. But he was then transferred not too long later to a state prison, Oak Heights, and that's where he's been housed ever since. He's been a state prisoner, but not on the roll for the Department of Corrections there in Minnesota because he's still technically in the custody of Hennepin County. And then we mentioned that $500,000 bail, but it was increased by the judge after his first appearance on June 3rd of 2020, and that's when it was set at $1 million. But if he was going to be released without any conditions, it would be $1.2 million. And then one of the other things that we noticed about his case, not knowing where he received the funds or why now he's able to post bail, post bond so long after he was first put in jail. But we did notice that his home sold for $279,000, and that is within the last month. August 28th is when property records indicate that the home that he owned with his wife was sold. We also know that he was going through a divorce and that the home was one of the bases of that divorce, and whether or not it would be divided would go to his wife, would go to him. According to tax records, it is owned by another person, not his wife and not Derek Chauvin.
That's interesting to see how that all plays out. But if you're going through a divorce, you're going to, not lose, but depending upon what the situation was, there's a division of assets depending upon how long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it could be kind of complicated. But generally speaking, if it's $1 million bond, most of those companies charge 10%, which in this case would be $100,000. So I'm wondering if he paid $100,000 to be released, and that's $100,000 that he wouldn't get back. Do we know?
Exactly. Well, he can't get it back if he is cleared. He, of course, wouldn't get it back if he is convicted, but he used a bond company. So when you use a bond company, they post that bond on your behalf and they keep that money. So if he is cleared through a trial, he would still have to forfeit that. We're presuming $100,000, something around there, 10-15%. But if he was able to put up the full $1 million and he was cleared, then he would be able to get all of that back.
Yeah, I bet he didn't, but I'm just taking a bet on that one. All right, conditions of his release. That's always important, right? The judge can put certain conditions, limitations on defendants when they get released. What do we know about the conditions of his release here?
Those are very clear from the judge. He is not allowed to carry a firearm or do any police work in the future. He also can't have any contact with the victim's family. He had to surrender that license that I mentioned, the gun license, and he is under supervised release, so he can't leave the state of Minnesota. He does have to make sure his contact information is on record. We noticed that the address that he used for his release, or what the court has still on record as his address, that is the old home that is now sold. So where he's living now, it's unclear. But he also has to make sure he shows up for any upcoming hearings. And the next one that is listed on the court's record as the next hearing is March 8th, 2021. We know that, Vinny, as the trial date so far, tentative in this case.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of bail, is to make sure that you show up. I mean, that everyone thinks it's punishment. No, it's to ensure that you show up when you have to be in court. That's the whole reason for it. The risk of flight, the potential danger to the community. Does he have a record? What was the nature of the offense? You put all those into an equation in determining what the bail amount, if any, should be. And here it was $1 million. So how about an ankle bracelet? Does he have to wear one of those?
No indication that he does. The court was really clear in laying out what the conditions of his bond would be, and there's a box that says GPS monitoring. It's not checked, so very unlikely that he is having to wear any kind of a monitoring system. His other co-defendants, they were also released. Their order was put on the court docket and has nothing about ankle bracelets or GPS monitoring associated with their release.
And how about what is next? Is the next thing March 8th, the trial date, or do we have something else that's going to happen before then?
That's the next time that we know that we will be physically in the courthouse, where there'll actually be a hearing unless something is set before then. But we did reach out to the court, and we just heard today that the court has set their own deadline for when they're going to make some really big decisions in this case. October 15th is when Judge Peter Cahill has indicated that he wants to get decisions on the big motions in this case. The motion to change venue, the motion for joinder in this case, and the motions to dismiss for all three defendants, something that could completely change the course of this trial depending on how the judge rules and how he holds. So that's his soft deadline that he wants to get these done by, but ultimately 90 days from September 11th. So we're looking at into December when ultimately all of those motions should be handled.
Okay, but the court is saying, listen, we're looking at October 15th as our own, target date here. And these are all big issues. I mean, the biggest being the venue. Well, not the biggest being motion to dismiss, obviously, right? Because if it's dismissed, then we're back to square one on that. But the venue change, and this is one prosecutors are fighting. They want to keep it where it is. All four defendants want this thing moved, right?
They all want it moved. They all want it moved to different counties. They've picked different places around Minnesota, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours outside of the Hennepin County area. And they say that it's because they may have defenses that are antagonists to each other. They may be pointing the finger at each other, and that the state has a different case against each of them. The state recently filed documents saying that they are going to be bringing up the past arrest history of Derek Chauvin and the past police discipline history of Officer Tutau. The other two officers are rookie cops. So they, of course, are going to say, look, our supervisors were the ones who were leading the way, and that's how their defense will likely go. In that case, they say this is going to be contrary to the interest of justice if they are all tried together. And if they are tried in Hennepin County, they think that would also make it very hard for them to find an impartial jury. So that's what they all want in this case. And we're expecting that October 15th, we will get a better sense of where this case will be.
And, they all want different counties because the other part of that is, right, we want all separate trials. So I'll have my trial over here, he'll have his trial there, we'll have a trial over there. And wow, the October 15th is such a huge day here. We've got to get ready for that because any indication whether the judge is just going to, file his decisions in all these cases, or is he going to bring everybody in and announce the decisions? Is that clear?
Everything that he said in the September 11th pretrial is that he would file his orders. He is not planning to bring them back in. In fact, at the end of the hearing, he said, "I'll see you all on March 8th, 2021, which was a little surprising because we're used to seeing a lot of pretrials, especially right up before the day of trial. So not sure if there will be motions in limine hearings or other items that will be addressed by the court and will be added on, or if the trial date will get pushed later, but he did not seem that he is in a rush to bring them back into the court, except for to decide on the jury. He's sending out a jury questionnaire to figure out if there should be a change of venue, and he may be bringing those potential jurors for a really early voir dire and jury selection, bringing them into the courthouse and letting all the parties question them to get a sense of where we go from here.
Yeah, I could. Here's my guess. Ready? If all four of them are now released and are free, there is no rush from the defense perspective, which means they're going to be filing a lot of motions. They're not going to be pushing for a speedy trial. They're going to litigate every issue to the fullest. My guess is when they lose an issue, they will try to take it up to the next level if they can get it up there and get a stay of proceedings. I'm just predicting. I'm just predicting based on history. So tonight in Minneapolis, okay, word is spreading all day long that Derek Chauvin has been released. Any indication from Minneapolis that they are preparing for protests or they're worried about potential protests tonight? Any indication one way or the other?
Not
yet.
Not the kind of indication, as far as reports that we've seen, not the indication that we've seen in the past, where we see the National Guard being on standby or an announcement of a curfew or anything like that. Nothing of that nature that we have seen. But there are always protests and demonstrations that may pop up for people who want to make sure their voice is heard and make sure if they have some kind of displeasure with the decision that there may be something of that nature. Of course, when we were on the ground for the pretrial hearing, we saw the businesses just took it upon themselves to take their own precautions just in case. So it's a possibility, but nothing on the scale that we've seen in the past.
All right, Julie Janae with all the information tonight. Thanks so much.